Let's talk about how to build a minimum viable product. Now, up to this point, we've talked about basically all of the theory that goes into building your MVP, thinking through the product, thinking through the offering, thinking through the things that need to be built. But now let's actually go through the steps of, okay, now I have the information. Now I actually want to progress. So I'm going to backtrack slightly just to make sure if you haven't seen previous videos, you're caught up. But again, a good reminder. First, specify what you think you need to build. And that think isn't there just to be insulting. It's because even the best founders need to learn things. They need customer insight. They need customer feedback. They need real world users to help guide them in the development of this solution. They don't assume, or at least they shouldn't assume, because there's a 100% chance they're wrong, that the product is going to be perfect from day one and there aren't questions unanswered. And here's the scary thing, answered, that need to be revisited. So making sure you really go in with the right mindset is critical for me, because a lot of founders go in and go, oh, I know it needs to be this and I know it needs to be that. And then the second that it isn't, they're dissuaded and discouraged and, disappointed. In other words, I'm sure I can think of. It's like they struggle to understand that failure or learning from the startup journey is fundamentally a part of the journey. And it's something that actually should be seen as a sign of positivity, because you're failing and learning, failing and learning, and then building and getting better over, oh, I failed. It's like, oh, you mean you tried? Good. Try again. Try again. That's part of the nature of this whole endeavor. So, what specific problem are you solving? This is just a good mindset check, and it always is front of mind. Just how I'm always going on about the customer. In my head, I'm also always going on about the problem, about the product, just making sure we are as in tune as possible, right? We want to make sure that everything is synced up. Do you understand how competitors and customers are solving it currently? The reason I bring this up again is because it's so important to understand what are the expectations of the customer today. The customer can have their own expectations because of status quo, what they're doing, their little substitutes in the meantime, or they can have an expectation because there's a mainstream narrative in the market. As an example, let's say you were going to start a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. And let's say it didn't have, in your MVP idea, it didn't have a contacts area or database. And I go look at the top 50 CRMs. Most, if not all of them, I'm sure, have a contacts database. So that immediately should be a flag in your head that goes, okay, do I not need it because my positioning is unique? And part of the reason is the CRM isn't necessary till later or something like that? Or is this an oversight where, hey, my customers are really going to expect a CRM. If I don't take the time to actually work in even a basic one into this MVP, into this development, I might disappoint them. I might not get demand. Maybe I should go talk to a few more customers before I finalize this. Exactly. This is a very iterative process. I want to encourage that you don't overstress okay, I have everything I need. Now I'm going to go to step 2. It's we will revisit step 150 times if that's what it takes, because we want to be really confident, reasonably confident, progressing into step 2, step 3, and beyond. Next, number 2, assess your resources. This is dollars. This is your skill set. This is how much time you have, and this is the energy, right? Some things are very annoying to do and take a lot of mental energy. So it's important to kind of assess what is the cost of what this thing's going to be. As an example, if you were going to build, let's say you were evaluating 3 features, and one of the features could be done in 6 weeks for $60K, and another feature needed 60 weeks and $600K. If you and I are sitting there, and let's say that each feature can live in this example on their own, meaning our MVP could offer one of 3 value props to start. The first thing I would do is go, okay, this one seems the most efficient in terms of getting it to market. But what if we're just efficiently building something nobody wants? Okay, if we were to take A, B, and C, can we walk out to 10 different sets of customers or leads or whatever, so 30 groups or 30 people, and pitch them each feature and see which ones react the most positively, which ones are the most emotionally excited, which ones follow up or seem interested in a follow up? Because if we did all of that, and of the 3 features that were tested, the 60K one got okay results, the middle one got, let's say, 0 votes, but the one that was 600K got 10 out of 10 people, the phones won't stop ringing. It's like, yeah, the 60K one might be more efficient, but the 600K one might be the actual thing you need, right? And notice a 600K isn't just a 600K version of the 60K. It's a feature that the cheapest we can get it while still having quality is 600K. So notice there's a very important distinction there. I'm not just making something more complicated and saying, oh, my MVP should really be the scope of like 6 MVPs because that's what my thing needs. No. Your MVP should be as little and small and efficient and focused as possible. And if that means making something that's bigger, but it's still one thing in terms of bigger cost, that's worth it. It doesn't mean that the second I spend 600K, I'd start building 6 other things as well that only cost 10K, only cost 30K. It's like, no, we're only trying to build one thing to build one thing. Now, when you're assessing the MVP stage, an important question comes up, which is, should you just do this yourself? Right? Can you just do this yourself? And the way that I like to think about it is, if you're able to somehow, duct tape together some sort of offering, whether it's manually done, like you just are like a consultant effectively, or it's something you can build on low code or no code, or it's something that you can build in Excel, let's say it's some sort of like calculator type deal. If there's anything that you can do to further the validation while using like a skill that you have, like if you've never built anything like this before ever and tech really scares you and you struggle to do even the most basic stuff, you're probably not going to be able to low code something, right? But if you're a successful consultant or a marketing agency or what have you, and you decide, oh, I want to like launch this thing, etc., you can probably use some of your own skill sets to test things, right? And make sure that things can be progressed with confidence. You can always just go invest 50K, 100K, 75K into developing something. But when you want to take your own time and put your own kind of effort into it, I find that a lot of founders will just end up wasting a ton of their time, frankly, if they're not coming from like a tactical background that has experience. So for me, I'm a consultant and I build tons of little mini tech things. I'm a giant tech nerd. So I could build a low code thing and not worry about it and send it out to 50 people and get some immediate feedback. But if I wasn't confident, the next thing I would do is start to rely on others. Now, the question of relying on others, it takes a lot of paths, right? Because there's one side, which is I'm going to hire a development agency. There's another is I'm going to bring on a co-founder. There's another that I'm going to hire my buddy to just build something simple. So you want to think through, okay, based off of my resources, how many dollars do I have to pay a third party? What skills do I have to maybe further it myself? How much time do I have? If you only have 3 hours, if you're doing your startup and you're part-time, you only have 3 hours, every 2 days to work on it. And the build for your little MVP that you have together is going to be 200 hours. Maybe it's more efficient to have somebody else do it, unless you want to be working on this and chipping away at it for months and months and months. It's up to you. But this is, again, it's all about, there's no perfect path. There's just less optimal paths given your circumstance. Here are the most common options that I personally assess whenever I'm building and testing and, ideating with clients. So the original way, this is, if you're thinking the most stereotyped, startup assumption, it's, oh, well, if you have a business idea, you just go find a technical co-founder. You find someone that's basically a nerd and they just build it for you and you give them a chunk of the company and life's good. Then you get into Y Combinator and Techstars and, you're worth 50 million or 50 billion, whatever. It's like, sure. That was the original way, and that way is still very popular if you're in the right circles and if you know how to network and if you have the right CTOs around you, et cetera, et cetera. A really important piece that I think a lot of people don't distinguish, and especially I see like the pains of it in the old way, is there's a big difference between a CTO and a developer. especially if that person is senior. And I don't mean like they're 70. I mean like they have senior positions like executives and directors and CTOs, blah, blah, blah. Because most CTOs aren't that interested in typing a bunch, right? They really don't want to write 100,000 lines of code. Lots of developers, I mean, hell, there's even developers that don't want to do that. But developers are inclined to do that. That's what they do because they like to build, right? They are the bricklayers in that way. Now, here's the balance. Back in the day, you go the original way, you bring on a big fancy CTO. Well, now you can't just lean on that CTO because that CTO is too senior. They don't want to do all the typing, which means you have to hire juniors or get junior support to execute on their vision. For some businesses, this totally makes sense because the skill set is of the CTO, the leadership that's required to make this particular, AI business, whatever, successful is super high. So it's way better to invest all the time, energy, money in the CTO and then get him or her the support they need to build X, Y, and Z out. More often than not, though, for the average founder, it's I just need someone to build the thing that I've envisioned in my head. Right now, that unfortunately or fortunately is far more in the developer camp. Now, here's the problem. You go too far into purely a developer that has no appreciation for architecture, for scale, for building things out to be used by multiple developers and, grown with the business. Now you get this duct taped, barely works, or completely isn't based off industry best practices, patchwork offering. Maybe it's good enough to progress. Maybe it's good enough to not, or maybe it's good enough to progress for a while, but not, all the way. There's just a lot of risk when you have developers developing without guidance. In a perfect world, and I've had this with a few of my startups, so I'm very thankful for that. You find someone that has CTO ability, meaning they know how to structure and think, and even if they don't have an answer because they don't have 50 years of experience, they know how to efficiently go find it online, talk to their network. They're productive, right? But that also can type, that also knows how to develop and build things. Not that they're going to be there forever or doing it 100 hours a week, but who would trust, the blacksmith that can't forge a sword? It's like, you got to be able to see them do it to know that they have that skill. And sometimes, hey, it calls for it. The new way, and I've mentioned this already, is the low code, no code way, where you basically drag and drop, you use an editor effectively, and there's a bunch of different ways to do this, to build a very simple version of your offering. This is in particular very popular when you're building apps because they just mock up, app screens, and it's like, click this button and it'll go to your calendar booking page, and click this and it allows for this feature, because so many features have been commoditized that they can basically be turned into drag and drop, right? That's why a feature isn't a business generally. So the new way is very popular because it gives a lot more momentum and a lot more autonomy to the slightly more than average tech competent person who's willing to put in some work, right? If you're a marketing executive and want to create a startup, if you're a finance person, and as long as you're not too scared of tech, you can watch enough YouTube and demos and get on calls with these different companies enough to build something and cobble it together. It's a really good thing. The big question that comes up with these, they're the two big questions that I find. One, how scalable are they? Because there's a lot of these solutions that people are building MVPs and different things, but they're not going to be able to take it to 50, 100, 500,000 users like they want. Maybe, here's the other question, it doesn't have all the features or offerings or abilities to offer everything that you want. Maybe it only covers 2/3. Maybe it only covers half, right? Whatever it might be. So thinking through, hey, if I'm going to build this low code thing, and in particular, I want to use it for my MVP, does it check the boxes of, can I use it with the audience that I want? For example, is it HIPAA compliant or whatnot? Does it track the right data that I need? Does it have the core 3 kind of features or functions that I need? And if these things don't exist, as tempting as it might be to use the solution, it might be better to consider another. Here's the last piece on that. Depending on what you're building in the low code, no code place, it's about, do you own the source code, right? It might be your license. This might be your product under the arrangement with them. But fundamentally, it's not your code that was typed, right? It's not your product that was built. A lot of people are very sensitive to owning their intellectual property. Fair enough. So what'll happen is, and I've actually seen a former client of mine do this, use a low code or white labeled solution, something where you're just, using somebody else's stuff, grow your revenue to 5, 6, 7 figures. And then from there, rebuild and build it your way using your technology. And yeah, it may seem like, oh, but I already have something that's working. It's like, yes, but working isn't the only thing we're thinking about. We're thinking about long-term viability. Can it scale with us? Can the IP get valuable with us? Can we develop it in the exact way that we want with no limitations? These are the considerations. And if you have to make 500K and then spend 100K to then unlock 500 million, that's kind of worth it, right? But it really depends on what kind of business you're trying to build. A quick note here, there's totally a world where you use low code and that's your whole business, because you're not trying to raise venture capital and you're not trying to become a billionaire overnight, right? You're just trying to build a business that makes you a couple hundred, a couple million, whatever it is, a couple $100,000 or a couple $1 million a year, and live good. That is totally viable on low code and no code solutions, because you don't need to think about global international expansion, blah, blah, blah. That's a good thing. My preferred, and the way that I see most effectively kind of play out for the long term, are specialized development agencies. These are agencies that have expertise in your industry, in your business model, in your technology. Let's say you're building a blockchain thing, so they're very blockchain experienced. These agencies work well. You have to do do the vetting and talk to them and make sure they're experienced, and maybe speak to a client of theirs and do the whole thing. But they're so valuable because not only can you very often get CTO level guidance as well, because they employ everybody you need. They have the CTOs on staff, they have the UI UX people on staff, they have the DevOps people on staff, they have the front end or full stack people on staff. They have everybody. So the nice thing is you can kind of sub in as you like and make sure you're getting not only a quality product, but a quality team, because you have the ability to, I don't like this developer. They're not doing too much. Can we swap somebody else in? And generally speaking, again, depends on the shop, but the answer is yes. The other thing is they often have more of a long-term relationship with you, where as long as you're honest and you structure it properly, where it's like, hey, we're looking for you to be our CTO or kind of help us build this and think through it for the first 1 to 2 years. Then we're looking to bring somebody on. We'd move you or your company to an advisory role on a cash basis, whatever. Let's do it. They don't mind, right? What people don't want is to be misled. So you don't want to talk to some small dev agency, pitch them that they're going to be the CTO forever, and then, snake the deal from them. That's not good. And mind you, if you have the right controls in place, like you actually own your code and you have the master controls, et cetera, you can do as you like, but I'm a biz dev collaborative person, so I try not to overpromise. I try to underpromise and overdeliver. So making sure you're navigating the relationships that exist within this bucket, making sure you're building them, managing them well, and holding people accountable both ways. It's really important. And I think that the specialized development agency really does have the longest term benefit with the least cost, because you get so much of what you need. It's way cheaper than building a team of, full-time or even part-time people regularly. And I don't know. It's the best way that I've seen. It's the most effective. So if you're considering something, I would highly encourage that. Number 4, set a flexible schedule. This is a timeline, set a flexible timeline and execute. What this means is when you're working with the agency, and let's just assume there's an agency for the sake of ease, and this applies to everybody because it even just random, developers or whatnot on your team. You want to set a timeline because you want a way to keep people accountable and keep goals aligned and make sure there's expectations. But you should, on your end at least, right? You don't have to tell this to the devs. You can just be nice. You should expect it to be flexible. You should expect delays, slippages, everything takes a little longer and costs a little bit more than you'd want. And that's okay, because you can't predict the future. The reason you're frustrated is because you tried to predict the future of exactly how much it would cost or how much this, and you were wrong. It's like you created your own unhappiness right there. So if you went in with the whole, hey, the developers are building something brand new for something that's never existed. We're constantly getting new ideas thrown at us. We're constantly making little micro changes, most of which are driven not even by the developers, but by other management that they have to fold in. Yeah, your timeline's going to have some give, or it's going to need to, or else people are going to start freaking out of, why is this a week late and why is this 2 weeks late? It's, well, you changed this and you added that. And then remember that customer interview we needed to do, which then changed this. It's like there's a give and take when it comes to executions and timelines, where you want to try and hold people as accountable as you reasonably can without putting them in a chokehold, because you're the one choking them out, right? You can't be mad at them that it's taking longer when you're giving them more work, right? It's kind of fair. Again, they should be seen as targets, not deadlines. Number 5, prepare for feedback. So now you've built it. And here's an important thing. I see a lot of founders, they love the word done. They're like, oh, our legal's done. Our pitch deck's done. Our financial model's done. Our MVP is done. Yeah, you are wrong. Switch to that word, which is none of those things are done. The company is done when it goes out of business or you sell it. Until then, the best that I can frame it, the way I think about it, is you're either current or not current. Current means you've folded in all available and known information and actions to date. Meaning, if you have a financial model that's you've changed the business model in your head, well, guess what? Your model's not current anymore. It needs an update to reflect what's more accurately, lived by the business. In the same way, when you build this MVP, I want to encourage you, part of the actual execution of it is this give and take of, as soon as I think it's done and it's good enough to be in front of customers, I hand it to them. And as soon as that handoff happens, this ongoing push and pull of feedback, edits. It just happens. And it's a great thing because basically you're sharpening the blade, right? It's one of those, you handed your customer a dull sword. They're happy with it, or at least they're happy enough. Now they're giving you little notes on where you can make it sharper. And the sharper and sharper and sharper you made it. Yes, is it annoying to not be done with the blade, as it were? Yeah. But you know what's really annoying? As a customer, to have a dull sword, or as a business owner, to have somebody walking around being like, oh yeah, this blacksmith made this for me and it's really dull. It's like nobody wants to complain about your solution. The better that you can make it for the customer, the better it is for both you and them. This is a perfect balance of selfishness. You should want them to love it for their sake, and you should want them to love it for your sake. Nice little give and take there. The end. So when we build these, MVPs, there's so much work that goes into the planning, and then there's so much work that goes into the editing, and so much work that goes into the scaling, etc. I want to encourage that it's not seen as, a definite end, meaning like, oh, we're finally done with this stage, now we go to the next. I think it's more of like a flexible timeline where you're currently going this way, you're building, you're ideating, and now you're going to start building the MVP. Oh, and now you learned something. Now you have to backtrack and progress again and do X, Y, and Z. It's about having a good understanding of the relationship and the actual way that development plays out, which is both learning, trial, error, ideation, team building, team firing, because you may hire a development agency, not like them, and have to swap. There's a lot that goes into that, and we're going to go into those pieces in the upcoming videos. But hopefully this gives you a good sense of how should you actually get the thing built. Are you going to build it yourself? Are you going to try and find a new team member or a teammate to build it? Or are you going to look to hire somebody that's a third party, like a development agency?